From the newly revamped Studio A, we welcome you into a brand new edition of All-American alongside Morgan Uber. I'm Kyle Youmans. It was a big week inside the American Athletic Conference. Big week for college football as a whole. But Morgan, we've got a ton to talk about. And it doesn't just start on the field. It starts off the field with really a lot of news this week from schools around the conference.
Yeah, some really positive news for the American and a big win for Commissioner Tim Pernetti and all of these schools. You know, last week we start hearing these rumblings of the new potential Pac-12 and potential. They look at the American brand, some of the strongest brands in college athletics of, hey, we want to go after these schools. But earlier this week, 15 members, 15 commitments, one American. Hashtag that is the American way, all committed. And to see the posts from all 15 of these schools go out on social media on Monday, really staking their claim that they're proud to be members here. They're proud to be a part of this conference that has done things that a lot of other conferences in the country haven't. You think about the college football playoff success that the Americans had. You think about all the New Year's Six Bowls. This is a conference where the student athletes are proud to be here, coaches are proud to be here, fans are proud to be a part of this conference, and really it's excited to see with these brands how they can continue to grow.
We have a great podcast. I mean, all of that is certainly a great weekly show, weekly content. No, this is a great moment for the conference. This is a great moment for all the student athletes, all the programs. The fact that they recommitted to this conference and to the landscape that is ever-changing in college football, and the way that things worked out, it really is better for everyone. And I think it started by the schools that recommitted initially and the rumors that started to swirl around Tulane and UTSA, South Florida, Memphis. They're all phenomenal programs, but in this ever-changing landscape of collegiate athletics, conferences want to be the destination. They want to be the big dogs. And in this case, example A, as in the example American, this is an opportunity to show that this is a conference that is indeed the destination. And like you said, Tim Pernetti and everybody that is involved with these decisions, each of the athletic departments that made these decisions, I commend you on making that choice. And it really, at this point in time, it all is what's about the student athlete, how it betters your programs and betters the student athletes in the NIL era, transfer portal era. The A is here to stay, and I think this was a really cool moment for everybody involved.
Well, we've seen this conference a number of times where they've lost schools and have been able to respond and rebuild, and that was all formerly done in the Mike Oresco era. But this was really the first challenge, not the first challenge, right? Tim Pernetti has been challenged since day one of getting on the job, but really the first real, big awakening of a major shakeup that could have happened in this conference. And, he's already made his rounds going to all these schools and being on campuses, talking to the ADs and talking to all these constituents and making the argument of how he sees the future for this conference and all the great things that he's going to be able to do in terms of just creating revenue for these schools. And I want to point out one thing before we move along. The American also put out a statement on Monday saying that this is a conference that prioritizes student-athlete welfare, has proud academic institutions, produces fierce competition at the highest level, and what I think is the most important part of all of this, has outstanding linear and direct-to-consumer national media partners.
Yes,
and I think it's the TV piece right there and that media revenue and rights deal that the American has, being on ESPN, having that national exposure for these student athletes to be able to have the opportunity to put that fierce competition on the field for the world to see. And, really just a great statement made by the American this week, and proud to get to talk about it with you.
Yeah, no doubt. And it really has been a great week, and not only off the field, and we talked about the news there, but on the field as well, as non-conference play is coming to a close, and we get to start looking at conference standings, some of these matchups that are ensuing. Hello, service academies. How are you at 2-0 in conference play? Undefeated top. Army, Navy, they've both been phenomenal. We'll talk plenty about each of those programs. North Texas 3-1 for the first time since 2018 and only the second time in the past 25 years. So we've got a lot to talk about. Memphis at 3-1. They fall to Navy this week. We'll see what the fallout is there. But Morgan, as you take a look at these standings, everything's going to move. Everything's going to shake. There's a lot to play out in a long season. But through week 4, this is how it started. This is going to be a fun couple of weeks.
Absolutely. I mean, Navy, talk about putting the nation on notice. A team that was picked 11th in the preseason poll. And right now we have the very special honor to welcome in the voice of the Navy midshipman, Pete Medhurst, who has been on the call for the Mids since 2013. Pete, great to have you here with us today. Now, before we dive into Navy, I want to ask, you saw the standings. You've, obviously been around Navy and, of course, your rival Army. When was the last time that you remember this much anticipation for the Army-Navy game? It's still weeks away, but both of these teams right now performing at such a high level. When was the last time you remember both these teams being this good?
Well, in the late teens there, both teams, Jeff really started to turn things around when they were finally able to end that long losing streak against Navy. And that's when you knew the rivalry was going to get even better because Jeff knows what he's doing, and he's proven that in his time at Army. It's great to see us obviously now turn the corner again and be able to get back to where we were at the very same time. And the great play that we had under Paul Johnson and Ken Niumatalolo. And there was no doubt Brian Newberry was going to deliver that for us. He's a tremendous football coach. He's an unbelievable human being. He's a guy that, like Ken and like Paul, he's a guy that you want to send your kids to play for. And obviously both institutions set you up for life. We know that NFL players are like 1 in a million. But if you want to have yourself set up for life, literally, Army and Navy are two of the best places that you can obviously attend in which to do that. The degree means so much, not only completing 4 years of school, but obviously what it can do for you from a service standpoint and a career standpoint following graduation. I mean, those things speak for themselves. And then, oh, by the way, maybe people have noticed they like to win football games too. And that's truly what I think this early portion of the season has been about. Both teams, Ken Niumatalolo said it famously a few years ago. I'll never forget it. He goes, don't worry. We're the guys that want to help, grandma across the street, and we're going to open doors, for you and shut the door for you and say, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, yes, sir, and no, sir. But don't believe for 1 minute when that game kicks off, we want to knock you in the mouth too. And that's so exactly what these service academies do for 60 minutes. On Saturday afternoons.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, I can attest from being up there, being around the Naval Academy, those great young men and women that are mids on the yard. You mentioned, Brian Newberry in year 2, just how he's been able to turn the corner. This win over Memphis, a team that was picked first with the highest expectations in, years for this Memphis team, right? The fact that they were able to do what Navy was able to do on Saturday, where would you rank this win, and how much is this going to set them up for just success here moving forward this season?
Well, I mean, just like any big win that happens in September, the question is, how do you handle the maturity of the following week? We go on the road for the first time this week.
Yeah.
Trent Dilfer's got a great quarterback. He's got a great offense. He's a fantastic coach. And what they do is very difficult to stop. And, how do we handle our first road game of the year? And I think that's the next test for this team, during the course of a semester. And by the way, we have 6-week exams this week for our guys. So they have that added, responsibility within their week of preparation, which is always a challenge for our student athletes. So, the question is, how do we handle that? And can we bring the exact same intensity that it takes to beat Memphis? The Memphis marquee sells itself, just like the Army marquee sells itself. The Notre Dame marquee, it sells itself. Well, now you got to go out there and you got to play a UAB team who you handled last year in a year where you didn't really play your best football at all times. So that team is going to be incredibly hungry to show Navy that, hey, we're a better program than we performed up in your building last year. And we'll see if Navy can rise to that challenge, because just because you win a game in September, you've only won 3. There's 9 more to go in this thing, hopefully a 10th with a bowl game after that. So how do you handle game number 4 coming up this week with your first road trip, and then knowing that, oh, by the way, on the horizon is Air Force out there, which obviously means so much to the Navy caveat. So, I mean, I think, to me, how do you handle your first road game against another very good offense coming up is the next step in the maturation of this program.
I love the way you outline that because it's a test, it's a benchmark, and it's an opportunity to build on what you did this past weekend. But you were tested, and this Navy team was tested in the middle of that Memphis game as well. This wasn't your normal upset where the underdog goes in, they're at home, and they jump out early, and they have a lead, and then they have to hold on down the stretch. It was really punch, counter punch all the way through. I mean, Memphis was up early. Navy kept going back and forth with them until it was finally the midshipmen that kind of pulled away in that second half. What did that tell you about this football team and the makeup of this program and the fact that whenever the Memphis Tigers came back with that counter punch, they were ready to absorb it?
I mean, look, they had beaten us 5 years in a row. I mean, the first 4 years we were in the league, we played some epic games with Memphis, and the winner of our game usually went on to contend for the Western Division crown with Houston at that time, and we won 3 of the first 4. But Ryan Silverfield found the winning formula. They had beaten us 5 in a row. But look, I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Seth Hennigan has been one of the best quarterbacks the league has ever had. Their coaching staff is excellent. Their game plan was phenomenal. Our defense is pretty good. You don't see teams make our defense look like that very much, but when you get punched in the mouth on the first drive of the game, the question is, how do you answer back? And Navy was able to answer back. And I think we're seeing, look, I mean, this was only game number 15 for Brian Newberry as a head coach. This was, Blake Horvath has played a handful of quarters at, quarterback for us. So, he's only going to get better. And it was game 3 for the kids with Drew Cronick as the offensive coordinator. Please don't tell people that. That's who it is. We want to keep Drew here for a while. His stuff is remarkable. And we really didn't have to run much of it the first 2 games. We could keep it fairly simple in the first 2 games against Bucknell and Temple. But Memphis, you got to empty the tank. And I think you saw our kids do that. But what's also noticeable is our recruiting side with Danny Payne and his office have done a tremendous job bringing players to the attention of our coaches who then go watch the film, go visit with the players. I mean, we got players that are running away from people out on the field. Blake Horvath is going 90 yards. He's running away from people. Eli Heidenreich is running away from people. Alex Teska runs away from people in the open field. Rayon Lane, whose brother, of course, now is playing at Penn State. He makes an interception. Last year it was 97 yards against UAB. Last week it was 86 yards. He's running away from people. So we're obtaining the student athletes and the quality of a student athlete on the field that can compete with athletes who, let's face it, I mean, our league is good enough to be a Power 5 league, if you will. And obviously Tim is charged with keeping that marketing brand going that Mike had established and fought so hard for. But Timmy is an incredible replacement for Mike Oreska. The fact that you can have a Tim Pernetti come in and be the commissioner of this league with his background, his savviness in terms of TV, understanding that, but understanding future growth for the league. And I think that's one of the reasons why the schools that chose to stay, they said, hey, we want to follow that guy. That guy's a visionary. He's going to help our league get better and grow. And, Memphis has been a phenomenal program in this league. To beat them is a big feather in your cap. But don't for 1 minute think Memphis is going to fold the 10 up. They're going to be a team that is still going to contend for a spot in this championship game later on this year. But I think it's also, though, on the surface, was it, Navy picked 11th and Memphis picked 1st analytically, and because a piece of paper said, hey, this is the way people voted. Sure. But I said it before the season started on our It's College Football podcast that if you think Navy's going to finish 11th in the American, I've got some things that probably wouldn't sell very high that I'd love to sell you for a couple $1 million and take your money if you think they're going to finish 11th in this league. So far, the players and the entire organization that is Navy football has made that projection look good so far. But obviously, as we know in sports, you're only as good as your next game. And we'll see what happens against a very good UAB team down in Birmingham on Saturday.
Well, I know you asked us to not pump up your offensive coordinator, Drew Cronick, or should I say Dr. Drew the Cronick, because what he is doing has been sensational. It's a complete 180 of what we've seen from this Navy offense this year and what he's doing with Blake Horvath Why is it this offense is catching people so off guard? What do you see? What wrinkles, does he have that really is just making he has the right pieces, but also just, his brain and everything that he's putting out in that playbook?
Morgan, I think when you evaluate football, especially people that have to call plays, coordinators, head coaches, whichever, one has that responsibility. The thing that made Paul Johnson so good and got our program turned around, Paul Johnson's not even holding a play sheet in his hand. He just puts his hand on the shoulder of the player, telling him to play in his ear, and he sends it into the game. Some coaches, men and women, regardless of sport, are so blessed with the ability to have the it factor. Paul Johnson had it. He's one of the greatest play callers in the history of college football. Ivan Jasper was able to succeed him under Ken Niumatalolo and do the same thing here at the Naval Academy. Drew Cronick, when you talk football with him, you just come away with those conversations shaking your head real silently and looking at people like, yeah, that guy's got it. And I think the fact that our kids have played incredibly hard for him over the first 3 games, they're enthused about what's going on. It's still a lot of option principle type football. It's not the pure triple, which the fact that, Blake showed you this week. Look, Drew said, we've got to take layups when they're there. And, Blake Horvath has been very efficient. The greatest turnaround for him is his ability to throw the football. He's made such great strides working with Ivan Jasper in that category that's why our offense is really good. Sure, you can put 7 or 8 people up in the box, but now we can make you pay for doing that, where over the last couple of seasons, we hadn't been able to do that on a regular basis. Ty Levitai was the kind of quarterback that could throw and could hurt you in that category. And he threw the ball very well for us, but he didn't necessarily have the breakaway speed that a Blake Horvath does. Yeah. So now you got the guy that comes to the line of scrimmage that has that, I don't want to, dare I say it, I'm not comparing him, but he's got that Keenan Reynolds-like gene. He knows where the ball has to go. He understands completely what the offensive coordinator is asking him to do. And when you check to something else, he knows what to check into. And if Drew Cronick sees you lined up one way, he knows what to call now to counteract what you're doing. And I thought this week's game was, Memphis and Navy both have very good defenses, and you're going to see that in other games as the course of the conference go. But what Coach Cramsey at Memphis and what Drew Cronick did this past week in terms of play calling and winning the chess match 75, 80% of the time throughout the course of the game, it's just extraordinary what those guys were able to do from an offensive play calling standpoint in this contest. And if you're a fan, even if you're a casual fan, you don't even have an attachment to Memphis or Navy, and you watch this game within the American Conference, you can't help but come away going, man, these teams are fun to watch. This is exciting football to watch. And that's why, again, I put our product up against anybody out there, and our teams, when the opportunity arises, usually go out and represent themselves very well out of conference when the moment arises. And I think they'll continue to do that. Look, Memphis had just gone down to Florida State and picked up a win there against the Seminoles. So, it was just incredible football. It was great football theater to watch this past Saturday. But it goes back to the quality of the athletes on both teams and the incredible coaching staffs that both head coaches have been able to assemble.
I'm a fan of the sling tee, as I like to call it. I think I love the fact that it's a millennial version of the wing tee. And you as a play-by-play announcer will attest to this. Triple option wing tee football is not always the most fun and entertaining brand of football to watch. However, this is way better than anything else I think we've seen in college football. It's at least from a formation and from a scheme standpoint. Tell us kind of the ins and outs of why it works. And I think Blake Horvath is a huge reason why it does work. But the actual thought process behind the sling tee is just a modernization of what is old school physical downhill football.
Well, think about this, Kyle. I don't care what anybody says. And Paul Johnson went to Georgia Tech and won an ACC championship running the triple, running his offense, which I knew was going to happen at some point because Paul is just a great football coach, obviously going into the College Football Hall of Fame. But I ask people this simple question. And as a fan base, if you get to 12-0 at the end of the year, and you get into the playoff, you compete for a national championship. Does it matter to you how you got to 12-0?
Absolutely
what plays
not.
you ran to get to 12-0?
Nope.
I mean, Trent Dilfer, the coach we're going up against this week, quarterback the Ravens offense so efficiently, so basic in its nature, and he won a world championship with it. Did the Ravens go, oh my goodness, we're going to give back our Super Bowl rings because we didn't run this wide open offense that Brian Billick once ran when he was the offensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings? Of course they didn't. The objective is to win football games. And when your players maybe aren't as tall, aren't as heavy, aren't as fast, analytically speaking, with some of the other teams, you have to come up with creative ways to move the football. A 90-yard run is a 90-yard run, no matter what formation we run it out of. If I pitch it to a tailback and he runs 90 yards, what's the difference between what he did and what Blake Horvath did this past weekend? It's an explosive play.
Yep.
It's exactly how we want to attack in football. Coaches tell you all the time, we cannot give up the X plays. And both teams provided that, albeit in different ways. And that's what you watch, Drew. It's a lot of misdirection. You set up plays, you're running jet sweeps one way, and then all of a sudden the quarterback keeps it and he goes back the other way. Lamar Jackson's running the similar thing right now with the Baltimore Ravens under Todd Munkett. The other day, their biggest play of the game, they fake a jet sweep to Zay Flowers, and he keeps it and goes the other way to secure a first down to end the game. Nobody was saying, oh man, I can't believe Lamar Jackson ran some version of the option or RPO to secure the first down that ended the football game against the Dallas Cowboys. No, all they said was Lamar Jackson made a key play to secure the game. Game is over. The Ravens win, and they get on the plane and fly home. So I think we get so caught up. I mean, look at the way Georgia's playing offensively right now. Does Georgia look like any of the teams from the mid-teens that we saw? I mean, Oklahoma, I was talking to Mark Andrews about this in the preseason out at Baltimore. They had one of the greatest offenses in the history of college football with some of the talent they had. Yeah, they're scoring 50 points a game, but it didn't help you in that game against Georgia where you lose like 54-48 or something like that. But you look at the numbers and you go, my gosh, look at how entertaining this is. But the objective is to win. And I don't care how you get there. It's about winning. And coaches will tell you this is a results-oriented business. The athletic director is going to come shake your hand at the end of the day on the field. If you're 12-0, 11-1 at the end of the season, he's not going to go, man, you guys were 11-1, but boy, if you'd have ran the 5 wides and empty backfields, we might have gone 12-0. No, that's not how this works. And I think sometimes we get too caught up in, how it looks, and then we don't appreciate what a Georgia does with basically a pro-style offense that sledgehammers you down the field and throws to a tight end like Brock Bowers and wins a national championship that way. It's great football. It's simple football. It leads to less mistakes. And if you make the least amount of mistakes and win the turnover battle, you're going to win a lot more football games that way. And that's what's been so fun to watch about this offense so far. So creative, but it's the well-timed call of the plays. And again, to me, you only got a handful of guys in this sport that do that. And, I thought Ryan Grubb was that guy at Washington last year.
Yeah.
He's the best offensive coordinator in football. And now he's doing the same thing for the Seattle Seahawks on the pro level. And they're sitting at 3-0 right now. So it's all about the coordinator, the timing, and obviously the creativity. And Memphis was completely off balance. I don't think they'll tell you anything otherwise on Saturday. We ran some stuff that they probably were not expecting, and it obviously provided great results.
Well, you mentioned UAB. You mentioned the matchup coming up this week. What do you expect out of the Blazers, who are coming off a bye week, coming off an open week, to have an opportunity to prepare for that system and get things ready going into what is a big matchup in the American?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. Look, you want a bye week before you play Army and Navy. You need it because what we do is so different than what everybody else does. You need the extra time. And that's certainly a benefit to the Blazers here. Look, I love Trent Dilfer, always have, loved him on TV. I just love the way I love listening to him talk about football. I love his understanding of football, and he's got a great quarterback. He and Seth are probably as good as it gets in our league at throwing the football. Both guys, I believe, are going to have an opportunity to at least get in an NFL camp and at least try to play in the league on Sundays in the future. And what a better teacher, for Zeno than Trent is. That's a guy that understands the pro game, understands how to teach the quarterback how to play. They've got great weapons. They can run the ball if necessary. And look, if you're UAB and you saw how Memphis passed the football against us, you're probably going, hey, there's probably some things that we can do there. And that's the challenge for Navy defensively. And we had a chance to talk with coordinator PJ Volker earlier today. And he said, look, I mean, there are things that we have to look at that game. We have to look at why things happen. But more importantly, I think the scary thing is when you talk to Brian Newberry and you talk to Drew Cronick and you talk to PJ Volker, they'll tell you there were things Saturday that we could have done so much better. And I think that's the scary thing, because teams that played Navy in the mid-teens and right up until 2019 when Malcolm Perry had the 300-yard day against Army and beat Kansas State in the Liberty Bowl, this is starting to resemble that type of football again.
Yeah.
And if this team can execute even more efficiently, they're going to have to do that. Our league is tremendous. We have one of the toughest schedules in the league. Obviously, we're going to have to, after we play Air Force, Charlotte comes to us, then we play Notre Dame in out-of-conference games, but then we got to go to Rice, we got to go to South Florida in back-to-back weeks, and then Tulane comes to our ball yard, and Tulane obviously has been a tremendous program the last few years. So we have got some serious potholes along the way before we end up having to finish the regular season in Greenville against East Carolina, who I'm sure is going to be hungry to play us. They didn't play very well against us last year, and they're going to be hungry and probably competing for a bowl game spot at that point. So, again, this is a week-to-week business all through college football, not just our league. Every league is like that, and the team that can compartmentalize, put the euphoria of the week before behind you, and play well that next week and play consistently. I mean, I look at Rayon Lane in our game. That interception at the end of the game, this is a young man that could have been a few minutes away thinking he was going to be the GOAT because he didn't recover the onside kick after he took a pretty good shot, looked even helmet to helmet on that play and didn't recover the kick. And they put the ball in Memphis's hands. What better player, one of our senior leaders, to come up with a gigantic play to end the game for the midshipmen. That's kind of what Navy football is all about. It's just about being out there next play. They played 45 plays in the fourth quarter on the field. The defense did. Wow. 95 plays overall. And all you got to do is make the play. And Rayon Lane made the play to end the game for Navy there.
It was a phenomenal win. Pete, thank you so much. You did a great job on the call, by the way. Loved hearing the 90-yard touchdown call. We may hear that a little bit later in the show as well. We'll give you some love on
nice
that.
Tease there.
Yeah, Pete Medhurst joining us, voice of Navy football. Appreciate you so much, and we'll talk to you again down the line.
Thanks,
Kyle
Pete.
Morgan, appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
There he goes. And of course, always great catching up with Pete. He's got so much knowledge for the game. He's been around it. 2013, he's been the voice of Navy midshipman football since then. And you can kind of tell there's some excitement there. On the other side of it for Memphis, though, it's unfortunate for the Tigers. We were just talking about them as college football playoff, maybe not even possibilities, but favorites going into that matchup. They dropped their conference opener. Is all lost for Memphis? I don't believe so, and I don't think you feel that way either.
Yeah, I think, the word Pete just brought up at the end of that conversation, compartmentalize, right? And I think that is what Memphis has to do, and that's what they're going to do. They have Middle Tennessee this week. They have a quarterback, Seth Hennigan, who is the most even-keel college football player, one of the most even keel people that I have ever talked with. He never lets the highs get too high, never lets the lows get too low. And I think for them to be able to bounce back, that's what they're going to look to do. It's going to be, watch the film. What did we do wrong? What can we learn from it? Flush it and move on. That's so much of what we hear from these college football teams on Sundays, right? Watching the film, flush it, move on. And Brian Silverfield will have his team ready in order to do that. And there's no question in my mind, Memphis is still a part of the conversation to win the American. And we know that winning this conference gets you a shot to be in that college football playoff conversation. So the Tigers, just because they've lost one game, it's just one game. There's still plenty of football left to be played. Kyle, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. You really are. And when we talked to Seth Hennigan last week, he said all of our goals are still in front of us. There's still a long way to go. And that was coming off of a win against Florida State where you went down to Tallahassee, came out with a 2012 victory. This is the same thing, same week, just a different loss column for the Memphis Tigers. Every goal is still there. Win your conference, win your conference championship game, go into the postseason with that one loss. You still have a shot. You absolutely do. And especially in this college football landscape where if you lose early in the season, teams and voters and committees tend to forget about that a little bit later on as well, especially against a good football team. Navy's receiving votes in the AP Top 25 now as well. That's a good team that they lost to on the road in a conference game. It speaks to what Pete just talked about in the tough schedule that the American does present. They had a tough one early, and they dropped it in a tight, weird, back-and-forth football game. If Memphis runs the table, which they certainly have a chance to do, it's not going to be easy. It's never easy to go undefeated in major college football. But if they were to run the table, I still think everything is in front of this Memphis team, and that's the way that they're going to have to look at it. And like you said, they have the right leadership to do so. They have the right coaching staff, the right quarterback, leaders like Mario Anderson Jr., who was on this show a couple weeks ago also talking about how important it is to keep a level head going into a season like this. I think Memphis has everything and more to play for still. You just can't let Navy beat you twice. And that's against Middle Tennessee, and that's also whenever they get back into conference play next week.
Yeah, I mean, they also have a great defense, too, and we know defense wins championships.
No
they
doubt.
have those ingredients. And, we've talked a lot about Navy, but one of the other service academies who has things rolling, the Army Black Knights. They had a big win over the Rice Owls, 37-14, and their locker room, they enjoyed it too. On brave old Army team, that victory fight song in the locker room. Nothing screams brotherhood more than watching Army football and Navy football, but watching those guys celebrate with their team. And with Jeff Monken, he talked about one of the things in that game, that first half, he said, I don't think we could have played a better first half. Just how complete you're celebrating.
I am. I loved the dance. Yeah, I loved the singing. You're right. It was a complete football game from the Army Black Knights. This is a legitimate football team, everybody. This is a fun team to watch, just like Navy in the Sling T. I would give Navy the edge in terms of offensive prowess and firepower. This Army defense is nasty. They run to the football. They gang tackle. They have discipline. They have gap assignment. They took Rice and took care of them early. It was a complete three-phased football game. Offense, defense, special teams. They had the block field goal early on when Rice was trying to find some rhythm. The offense got out there early. They were throwing the football around. They have the complete offense, and Bryson Daly does a phenomenal job of tying it all together with the option, with the throwing ability. They were able to torch Rice down the seam on the right-hand side here. This is a perfect throw over the top of coverage, dropping it in a bucket. Touchdown, Army, and that was not the only time they were able to do this. Rice has their own question marks. The Owls have a lot to fix, but Army is a team that can very well be one of the favorites in the conference, and it's not because they've played Florida Atlantic and Rice early. It's because they're a really good, well-coached, well-disciplined football team.
Well, Army's going to go as quarterback Bryson Daly goes.
No
right
doubt.
Now, he is just rolling. You look at what he did in the first half alone, 100 yards and 2 TDs. And I think, what's really important for him, right, this is year 2, being the starter, being the guy working with Cody Worley, who's been a part of this staff since 2020, but just promoted to OC and quarterback coach this past season. How tough and rugged he looks, especially running between the tackles. I mean, he looks like a fullback out there, but this is a quarterback who can also sling it with his arm, although he's only attempted 19 passes all year. I think his decision-making, Kyle, is what impresses me the most. And, right, these are smart kids at the at Army and at Navy as well, at these military academies. But what he's doing, the way that he's commanding this offense, I truly think Army will go as Bryson Daly goes throughout the the year.
And that's a credit to him getting better in the offseason and watching the film and learning how to read a defense in real time, because he had 7 touchdown passes last year. He had 6 interceptions. That touchdown to interception ratio, especially in an offense that doesn't throw the football around a whole lot, that's significant. I mean, that's 6 interceptions, that's 6 turnovers that you're giving to the opposing team. He has 3 touchdown throws on 10 pass attempts this year.
Crazy.
That's efficiency at his finest, and I think he's reading teams better. Credit to the Army coaching staff. They're putting him in spots to be successful, whether it's the run game, the passing game, calling the right play action, the right plays to keep a defense off balance. There will be ups and downs for Army football this year. They will go up against better competition. They will have some road matchups along the way that they'll have a tough time against at times. But the way that Jeff Monken has this ball club going, Cody Worley as the offensive coordinator, they could very easily win these next 4 games going into their open week and be 7-0 by the time we're getting to week 10, week 11, November, December football. I love this Army team, and they're doing everything in the right way right now.
Yeah, on the outside looking in, I don't think there's many of us that could have sat here back in July thinking that this is the way that Army would be playing.
Temple, Tulsa, UAB, East Carolina going into their open week. All winnable football games the way that this team is playing.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit of Navy's Blake Horvath and then obviously Bryson Daly for Army. If you're comparing those 2 quarterbacks, I know it's been a limited sample size, but if you had to pick one right now, who would be your player of the year?
Out of those 2?
Out of those 2 guys.
And here's the thing. You say player of the year. Both of these guys are in the conversation for conference player of the year. Period. Forget service academies as the prerequisite in order to do so. Blake Horvath and Bryson Daly have both done enough to be in that conversation. But I think there's only one guy right now that I would look at as more than that.
What do you mean?
There is a guy more than that. Let me shut the laptop here for a second. Whenever you're a Heisman voter, right? Whenever you're voting for the Heisman, you look at a couple different things. You look at team impact. You look at ability on the football field, so production, efficiency, whatever that may be. And you look at the way that you lead a football team, the way that you change a program. And the way that Horvath has done that to this point is tremendous. He is that offense. The sling T is run by Blake Horvath to perfection right now. He has the 1 interception that's on one occasion against a good defense. This Navy midshipman football team is 3-0 because Blake Horvath has played tremendous football, both throwing the rock with 5 touchdown passes through the air. Oh, and by the way, he had 6 touchdowns total in the most recent matchup against a receiving votes Memphis football team, top 25 Memphis football team in other polls. I think Horvath should be in the Heisman conversation. Not maybe a front runner. I don't think he's a front runner. I think Cam Ward from Miami has that. I think Jaden Milroe from Alabama has that. But in terms of these programs from Army and Navy, both are phenomenal. If Navy continues the way that they have been, I think Blake Horvath needs to be in that conversation.
Horvath for Heisman. Let's get it
Horvath
trending.
for Heisman. I like it. I think we can make it happen.
It has a good ring to it.
And he's been tremendous. Just like I said with Army, there will be times whenever they see a downpour and they see tougher competition, tougher opportunities. But against the best team in the conference, voted on by the media, going into the weekend, coming off of a power win on the road, he exploded for 56 points and 6 touchdowns. Blake Horvath needs to be in the Heisman conversation right now.
And it's still such a small sample size,
So
right?
small.
I mean, he only
So
played
small.
4 games last year. So what we're seeing from him, I think he's just getting things going. So it is exciting. I like the hot take. Horvath for Heisman. Let's get it trending. No question about it. Okay, Horvath over Daly for right now anyway. There's still plenty of time left in the season, and obviously these two teams, we have the final showdown of the season to look forward to many weeks down the road. But we're speaking of people who make big impacts on the field. How about for Temple? Maddox Trujillo. Kickers are superheroes too.
Yes,
this man completes the longest field goal in conference history. the longest field goal in Temple history, the longest field goal in NCAA since 2009, and the longest at Lincoln Financial Field. I mean, that's comparing guys, NFL kickers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Temple goes out and wins this game 45-29 over Utah State. And it was that field goal to me that was the total momentum swinger.
Complete changer.
And that's what Stan Drayton said after the game. I mean, no question about it. This team came alive, the offense, in the second half because of what he did right before halftime, nailing that field goal.
Yeah, the offense found their rhythm in that second quarter. They were down 14-0 early. They were able to put some points on the board, but it wasn't until Trujillo hit the field goal, the 64-yarder, that completely changed the landscape of this football game. It rejuvenated an Owls team that had been poor in their first 3 games of the year, that had really struggled at times defensively in the first half, and it gave them a bit of life that they had not seen previous. And I got to give credit to the the Temple defense too. They've gotten better every single week. They allowed 51 points in week 1, 38 points in week 2, 28 points in week 3, and then now you get the win against Utah State. So there's still a lot to fix for the Owls, but in terms of a revamped team and a revamped program, this was the type of win when they were 7-point underdogs at home, by the way. They went in and took care of business against Utah State. I really loved the tenacity that they showed. I loved the scheme and the speed. You can see it here. There's some speed there on that Owls football team, and they found a way to utilize it for the first time.
I think the most intriguing thing to me with Temple has been the quarterback situation. It was a battle all offseason, and in that fall camp, Coach talking about Forrest Brock being the guy. He starts the first 2 games. But then things don't really go according to plan, so they give the job to Evan Simon. He earns it. The start he had last week against Coastal got him close, a 1-score game, and then goes out and wins against Utah State. This is now his job. And, Coach talked about just the heart that he has, right? You'd have to, if you cut open his chest, how big his heart would be. This is a guy that puts everything on the line for his team, the chip on his shoulder, and just has a knack for encouraging teammates in good and bad times. And I think for a Temple team that has gone through more bad times than good, especially as of late, they need a guy like Simon to be leading their team. And
he looks like the guy to me.
Yeah.
5 touchdowns in that matchup. He's got a cannon of an arm. He can sling the rock around. Transfer from Rutgers, and he looks confident out there. There's a lot of times where whenever you have a desperate football team like that, you're 0-3 going into week 4, you need somebody to step in with some confidence. And Evan Simon has that. 7 touchdowns now on the year, just the 1 interception. He's taking care of the football. That is the recipe for doing something and trying to turn the ship around if you're the Temple Owls.
There's a lot of talk about in college football momentum, and
Yeah.
Temple has a little bit of that right now, but they're also facing a team that has a whole lot of momentum with Army this week. And so you look at this matchup that we have on Thursday night, ESPN primetime on Thursday. Army right now outrushing opponents, get this, 1,089 to 288. How in the world does Temple stop this rushing attack?
They don't. That's unfortunate. And I know we're doing picks here too, like who's going to win the game. Army is so good at running the football. We just talked about how much they are a physical presence. Temple did a better job of slowing down the run against Utah State. It still wasn't perfect, and they're giving up that yardage per game, 220 yards. They still haven't faced a team running the football like this Army squad, and the closest that they did was Navy back in week 2, and the Owls ran 10 first-quarter plays, and they had 5 yards. So when they had the football, they didn't really do a whole lot. Whenever they gave Navy the football, the Sling T ran all over the Owls, and I expect Army to do the same. And I don't think it's actually going to be a blowout win for Army. I think Temple keeps it close, kind of like what you said. I think it's a lot of it has to do with the quarterback position, some of that confidence that they gained against Utah State, but I would pick Army to win this football game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Army right now is, especially having to prepare for Army on a short week, I think is, where Temple gets in a little bit of a tough spot. But I do like the spark that Evan Simon has created for Temple. Excited to see how they can build moving forward. But Army, the Black Knights have my pick also as well in this one.
Credit to Temple, 0-3 start, got the win, got it moving in the right direction. We also saw another team go in the right direction for the first time in a couple weeks as well. The Tulane Green Wave, 1-2 to start the season with a couple of ranked losses, but they get it done on the road against Louisiana. Stadium under construction and all, doesn't matter to the Green Wave, roll through. And one of the topics of conversation around this Green Wave football team and Coach John Summerall, he said he wants to be state champions first, then conference champions, and then move into the college football playoff if that ends up being the case. And just
Goal
like
number one, check.
You got the Louisiana one out of the way, right? You got that one done. Now you move on to conference. They've got a tough conference slate to start. South Florida, UAB, then they get a bye week, and then it goes into the rest of their conference slate before ending out with Navy and Memphis in their last 2 games of conference play. So they got it done here, 41-33 the final score. I said last week it would be 41-17, so I got one score right. The defense had some problems along the way. If they are going to achieve that second goal and contend for an American Athletic Conference title, the defense is going to have to play better, but I liked what we saw from Darian Mensah. Of course, Mekhi Hughes is phenomenal. I mean, he's one of the best running backs in college football right now, and you could see that in a win like this.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to say I told you so, but I did say it was going to be
you said it was
a
one
close
score.
game.
Yeah.
And, but for Tulane, you got to be happy. Mekhi Hughes got back to being Mekhi Hughes, having himself a day, racking up 166 yards. And going into this game, Summerall's number one key was win the run game. And, man, that is what they did. And I think a little bit of it, too, played into the conditions of this game. It was hot and humid down there in Louisiana. It was really hot everywhere, all over the country, but especially, so running the football, controlling the clock, and tiring out Louisiana was going to be a key to success in this game, and that is what they were able to do. But you mentioned the defense being a little bit of, getting it into some trouble. Summerall's a defensive-minded guy. He's going to get this defense right, but I think it comes down to detail and discipline. There were a few times where there was just poor communication on the back end, wide receivers for Louisiana just finding wide open space, and also some issues with some of the pass interference calls. They had 5
Couple
total.
of them, yeah.
So, being able to clean that up moving forward. But this is a gritty blue-collar team. That's what Coach Summerall talks about. That's their culture.
Yeah.
That's how they're going to play, and that is how they're going to continue to win and find a way.
And I think you bring up a great point, too, because whenever you think of Tulane, of course, you think of the high-flying ability from Michael Pratt, from Tajay Spears, and some of the playmakers they've had recently. But it's pretty simple for Tulane. They are in their last 30 games, they've outrushed their opposition 22 times, including 16 times out of their last 20. In those contests, in those 22 of their last 30 games, when they've outrushed their opponent, Tulane is 22-2. Take care of the football, run the ball effectively, and you're going to have some success, which, good news for Tulane, they've got a guy who does all of those things, and that's Mekhi Hughes and what he does. Now run for 100 or more yards in 9 of his last 14 games. He's getting better as the year goes on. This was by far, I thought, at least maybe not his best numbers game of the year, but on tape he was tremendous. He looked quick. He looked decisive. He's got great vision when it comes to the running back position. He's learned very well from the guys who have come before him, and he is the number one back for this Tulane Green Wave team. And I think if you have him, you have Darian Mensah playing effective football. 25-7 is what they've been over the last 32 games. They can keep that same winning percentage, maybe even better as they go into conference play. And, of course, John Summerall, he knows how to start 1-2 and still win conference titles. Coming from Troy, that's pretty much all he did. Start 1-2, win a conference title. He has things rolling in the right direction. It's going to be a fun test this week, though.
Yeah, I mean, conference play for them starting this week with South Florida, a team that is looking to right the ship and get back on track, coming off 2 teams, Tulane and South Florida, both having these really tough non-conference tests. I mean, South Florida, I think, had the tougher end of the stick, having to go up against Miami, who at this point is looking like a national championship contender. Cam Ward, we talk about Heisman voting, and
he would have my vote right now.
He's up there, no question about it. But Tulane, South Florida, this is a game that I had circled on my calendar when the schedule really first came out.
Yeah, one of these teams, the fact that one of these 2 teams is going to have to start 0-1 in conference play is so unfortunate because they're both contenders. I think this might be an early game to show who is a contender, especially with Memphis losing. Can you imagine the uptick from having a game in hand above the Memphis Tigers? Whoever has this game will have that.
It's huge.
So it is. It's a huge one. And I thought, speaking on USF in their game against Miami, we talked about it last week. They have some size that could compare to Miami. The speed was what was worrisome about the Bulls in front of a great crowd, 60,000 at Raymond James Stadium. It was an incredible atmosphere. They got off to a hot start. They had an opportunity early. I mean, it was 15-14 with 2 minutes left to play in the first half. The only thing, though, Morgan, and you know this as much as anybody, if you're going to beat a top 10 opponent, you got to score touchdowns. You can't rely on field goals. You had the early touchdown that even that was on a flea flicker, a trick
that
play.
was awesome.
It was phenomenal with having Byron Brown receive a touchdown for the first time.
I love seeing that play call and that aggressiveness early in the game. I mean, that's Alex Golesh at his best. But then it just, like you mentioned, they had to settle for field goals instead of touchdowns. And with this high-powered Miami offense, there's just no way that you're going to be able to keep up putting up 3.
Well, and it turned into a track meet, as you can see here, left sideline. Once it turns into a track meet like that, and you get out of your game plan a little bit, the script starts going to the wayside. I thought South Florida did everything and more to be scripted in the right spot to win that football game, or at least be in position, just like they were in Tuscaloosa 2 weeks ago. They had every chance to do so. But then as soon as Miami found some momentum, and you hear about dominating the 8s going into a half and out of a half, they just were off to an unbelievable start. With that 15-14 score, 2 minutes left to play in the first half, the Hurricanes rattled off 36 unanswered. That's just part of a team that, one, is a national championship contender, led by a Heisman contender, on the road where they had plenty of fans also in the middle of that 60,000-person crowd in Tampa. This was a tough one for South Florida. Luckily, their top 10 opponents are done for now. They get to break from that, and they can now focus on conference play and taking what they learned in these matchups and applying it to a game just like this week against Tulane.
Yeah, I mean, a couple major takeaways. I just think the line of scrimmage for South Florida was completely worn down. And Byron Brown wasn't 100%. We saw him exit the game twice. Early, it was in the second quarter and then again in the fourth quarter. So he wasn't 100%. Yeah. And so there's speculation, right? Is Brown going to be ready to go for Tulane? But the good news, we did hear Coach Golesh give the update earlier this week on Brown, who he did take all the reps with the ones and looked really good at Tuesday practice. So if you're the Bulls in this offense, you have to be really happy about that. But I think the best thing that Coach Golesh said in his post-game press conference after the win against Miami, he said, look, we don't, there's no such thing as a moral victory. I don't believe in that. But the fact that his team believed that they had a potential to win that game going up against the number 8 team in the country in Miami, one of their biggest rivals in the state of Florida, but they still had the belief that they were capable of winning that game against a quarterback who could very well win the Heisman when everything's said and done. He said that filled him with pride, and there's culture, there's belief, the want to is there for this team. And South Florida, regardless of what happens on Saturday in this game against Tulane, whether they go 0-1 in conference or 1-0, I do think that that final week of the season, we're still going to be talking about the Bulls. They're still going to be relevant in this conference because they're an insanely talented and well-coached team behind Alex Golesh.
Completely agree. I think they're heading in the right direction, and even if they do fall this week, it won't look great. You're going to be below 500. You'll be winless so far in conference play. And also, by the way, you get a bye week and then you get Memphis. So it doesn't get much easier for South Florida, but they will have an opportunity in this matchup. So I do ask you, who do you got in this one? This one's going to be tough.
It was tough. I really weighed, sometimes I have a gut feeling right away. There's no question. I thought about this one, and with Tulane and their success, they've won 10 straight American regular season conference games. I have the Green Wave winning 11 straight. They are my pick in this one.
Mine too. I'm going to go with Tulane. Not because I don't believe in South Florida. I do believe in the Bulls, and I think they're a legitimate contender in the conference too. I think they may be a little bit beat up. They had a tough – you're talking about the number 8 team. They played the number 4 team on the road 2 weeks ago. You had a really back-and-forth rivalry game feel almost with Southern Miss, where that was a physical football game and weird weather down in week 3. So, yeah, I am going to go with Tulane to get it done. I just think they're a more complete football team as it sits right this second. South Florida is going to have a chance to really surprise some people late, though.
Yeah, well, speaking of surprises, we had a really fun one between Tulsa and Louisiana Tech.
This was a
on
fun one.
Saturday, and I think the way that it ended in overtime, which I'll get to those highlights here in a little bit. For Louisiana Tech, a team that had to use 3 different quarterbacks in this game, but Tulsa's defense, they were so opportunistic with 3 turnovers, 5 sacks, 9 TFLs. They looked, this is the best that Tulsa's defense, I think, has looked all season.
No doubt. And I think part of it is because Louisiana Tech's trying to figure out what they're doing on offense. Sonny Cumbie and what they're doing in Ruston, they have some pieces here and there. They just haven't been able to put the puzzle together just yet. And this is a football team that I think in the grand scheme of college football is one of the lower-end football teams. Tulsa showed that they have seen some improvement. They've seen some improvement. Not perfect yet. I loved the defense, and I loved what they did late in the game. But it was really Kirk Francis that I thought was the biggest selling point for Tulsa as a team because they have Anthony Watkins. He's a weapon as a running back. But what Kirk Francis has done is he's taken some of that experience and taken some of that talent now in his second year as a full-time quarterback. Good quarterback play can take them to another level, and they'll have a chance this week against North Texas to do it. But he went from 56% completion last year to 62%. He's already close to matching his all-time or his yardage coming into the year with 880 yards this year. He has 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So I like the way that Kirk Francis has been playing, but it was that play right there that was the difference maker.
Scoop and score, but
almost.
not
Yeah,
quite.
almost. On the second play, right? Second play from
Of
scrimmage
overtime.
in overtime, and he takes it all the way back, setting it up. Taking the possession away was the important one, and then, of course, Tulsa kicks it through, wins the game. That was a classic matchup. Great call, by the way, from ESPN Plus. Lynn Rollins, Chris Mykowski, good friends with both of those guys. They had a fun call of an overtime win.
Absolutely. Owen Ostrowski, let's give him a shout out.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
He's fun. He's an old school D lineman. I love it. And look at the rumbling down the field. You know he wanted to finish it out.
So bad.
You know he wanted that extra 2 inches maybe.
But at least his team got the win. I'm sure,
got
a
it
team
done.
guy.
He's still big man on campus. He's still the hero. I mean, the strip sack and then the fact that he was able to pick it up. Let's look at it again.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Look at him go.
Oh,
showing speed.
he did everything he could here. Oh,
And on
he
the
even
road,
reached
too.
he reached for the pylon too.
I wonder who taught him that.
I don't know. Yeah, I wonder who did. How fun. That was a good one. All right, let's talk about their matchup this week, Morgan. They've got a fun one in their conference opener. So they actually traveled nearby where we are.
I was going to say, you were on the call and got to see North Texas up close in person with their win and getting right over Wyoming 44-17, showing off that balanced offensive attack. Chandler Morris looking, back to form. What did you notice with the offense? What stood out?
Well, I noticed that they're deeper than we anticipated because they were banged up. Damon Ward Jr., who, of course, we talked about earlier in the year, had 230 yards in the season opener against South Alabama. He was out unavailable. He played in the first quarter, really, and I think he had 1 grab. And then he was coming out of concussion protocol, but it was an ankle injury that pulled him out of the game. So your top wide receiver was out. Couple of different running backs are out indefinitely. So they relied on a guy. How about Mackenzie McGill?
Yes.
This is the story of the week in the American, in my opinion. He had not had a carry in his collegiate career. No carries in his collegiate career. Wasn't even known to be dressed out going into the week.
Wow.
Middle of the week, Chandler Morris told us in the postgame show, he said, we weren't sure he was going to dress out. So Mackenzie McGill, freshman, comes in, scores not 1, but 2 and 3 touchdowns. And he didn't necessarily do it from the red zone. He wasn't just doing it with red zone touches. He was doing it from 26 yards out. They gave him 3 touchdowns in his first 6 carries. He was the first freshman that the North Texas Mean Green have had score 3 touchdowns on the ground since 2004, which, by the way, just so happens to be the team they were honoring for their Sun Belt championship with the script North Texas helmets. They had the throwback helmets on and everything. It must be something about that. But really, what it says about, or says to me, is about Eric Morris's offense. His offense is the real deal, and it may not be a specific set of playmakers. It may not be a specific set of individuals that you have to rely on. As long as you have the quarterback, which they do, Chandler Morris is the real deal as well, there's an opportunity for yardage. And 485 yards, that's normal for this North Texas team. They're going to put up points. They're going to put up yardage. They did so early in the season. They're 3-1 now, and some might be able to say, you know what, Kyle, they haven't played anybody, right? I disagree. Look at how South Alabama looked against Appalachian State last week. Appalachian State we praised for beating ECU a week ago. They get beat up by the South Alabama team, a team that North Texas put 56 on at home in Mobile in week 1 of the season. That win looks better and better as it goes along. I like what North Texas has going on in Denton right now. Eric Morris has that thing cooking, and it doesn't matter who are the chefs in the kitchen right now.
Yeah, I mean, they really took it out on Wyoming after that loss to Texas Tech.
Yes.
I mean, Morris getting back to his third 300-yard passing game through just 4 games. I mean, that just speaks to itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
And as long as he takes care of the football. Before that, he had 3 picks against Texas Tech. You mentioned that loss. He had 3 picks the week before against Stephen F. Austin in a win. He didn't have an interception this week. It was almost a perfect game whenever it came to Chandler Morris. They had a 300-yard passer, a 100-yard receiver, a 100-yard rusher. Shane Porter, his first ever start at the running back position. He was a wide receiver, walk-on initially, transferred from Kansas State. Now he's playing running back for North Texas. He looked great. Really excited about what North Texas is doing, and I think as a team that was picked to finish middle of the road in the conference, they still have a ways to go to be considered in a true contender form, but they've got a chance to really be 4-1, 5-1 if they keep moving in the right direction like that.
So their opponent, we just talked about, the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, another team that picked up a great win overtime, has some momentum. This North Texas team absolutely rolling. As you look at this matchup, what does this game come down to in your eyes? It
comes down to having these linebackers play free again. They made a switch last week, switching from a 4-3 traditional to more of a 3-4 look. It was really a 3-3-5 really initially. So it takes a pressure off of the linebackers, lets them play downhill against the run. And Tulsa is more of a team like Kirk Francis, like we talked about, that's going to throw the ball around a little bit. I think they're built for that. Rich Tejada's been tremendous. They have some guys in the secondary that they rely on, like a Jaden Hill and company. I think they have to stop the run, and I think that 3-4 defense showed at least in 1 week against a Wyoming team that likes to run the football. They held them to 60 yards on the ground, 64 yards rushing. That was a check-the-box thing for me, and I think they have to do it again against Tulsa this week.
Yeah, I mean, for them to score 20 unanswered points starting in the second quarter, the defense held up their end of the bargain too, so definitely moving in the right direction.
Who are you picking in that game?
You know, I think I'm going to go North Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the fact that their offense is hitting their stride, I think they got that one loss, that Texas Tech loss, as we say. They flushed it behind them. They learned from it. We saw them make those adjustments and move on. We saw their defense look better this week. I think they're going to put it all together, and they're going to go pick up that first conference dub.
Yeah, I called that game last year in Tulsa. I think if it was in Tulsa again this year, I may pick the Golden Hurricane, but it's not. It's at DAC Stadium in Denton, Texas. I think the Mean Green get it done, and they improve to 4-1. That's just one of the games we have to look forward to in the Week 5 schedule. Oh, man, we've got a fun one. Real first full week of conference slate, right? And it starts on Thursday.
Thursday Night Live.
Army and Temple. Which game on this page are you looking forward to the most?
Gosh, I mean, it's got to be the one that we talked about, South Florida at Tulane. I think, you know, these teams both challenged in the non-conference. They won the games that they were supposed to. They had bright spots in the games against their ranked opponents. And as the conference opener for both, I think we have some exciting quarterbacks with Darian Mensah and Byron Brown. So South Florida, Tulane, that one really is going to have my eye.
Yeah, give me UTSA and East Carolina. Those are two teams that are trying to get back on track. And then you've got, same thing could be said for Charlotte and Rice, a Saturday night matchup. That should be a fun one because both of those teams need a win tremendously. Memphis needs a win going up against Middle Tennessee. And then we just talked about the conference opener for both the Mean Green and the Golden Hurricane. That'll be a fun one as well from DAC Stadium. So we have plenty more to talk about here on All-American, and we do have our first student-athlete interview of the week. Morgan, really excited about this one because, I mean, like we talked about earlier, the Navy midshipmen are going in the right direction, and it may be because of what their quarterback's been up to.
Chapman in motion. He'll fake it to him. He'll run it inside 10. Outside the numbers 20. He's at the 25-30. Back to the middle of the field. He's at the 50. He's at the 40. He's at the Memphis 30. Outside the hash mark. Back to the numbers. Blake Horvath. He just went to the checkerboard end zone. 90 yards for a Navy touchdown. Wow!
An electric atmosphere, an electric call, electric moment for the Navy midshipmen as Blake Horvath joins us now. And 90 yards to the house. That was one of multiple scores on the day as the Navy midshipmen take down the Memphis Tigers in the first big upset so far. It may not be called an upset very soon, Blake. You guys are 3-0 and playing some really good football. Appreciate you taking some time, but talk to us a little bit about that moment for you and really the electricity in the building and how it radiated to help you guys come out on top.
Yeah, I think, that moment in the game, fourth quarter, it was huge. And we talked in the huddle. Coach Newberry's like, man, we really need to score here. And I think, not a lot of us thought it would be the first play. I had an inkling in my mind with the play and how they played it earlier that it could be. But, I was more interested in trying to maybe go 10 plays, 12 plays and score. But, we'll take the points however they come. And, I think everybody in that play was just, excited, playing their butts off and, help us pull out a win.
You mentioned how you saw it pre-snap, maybe the way that they played it initially and kind of thinking that could be the opportunity to take it 90 yards. Have you ever had a touchdown like that before, 90-plus yards away, where it's really just you versus the other 11 on the opposite side?
No. Honestly, 90 is, I think, my career long, like all my career from maybe, Pee Wee football and above. So I was a little more tired in the end zone than I thought it would be, but I think I was just too excited to even realize it. So, in that moment, it's honestly too much space to know what to do. And so you're just trying your best not to get hawked. I think that'd be the most embarrassing thing, but, you're just sprinting, trying not to think about anything. I told people I blacked out a little bit. So that's the honest truth.
Blake, this has been the most points for Navy football through the first 3 games since the year 1918.
Wow.
Just unbelievable. For you being the leader of this offense, what is it like, managing, commanding this hybrid wing T exciting offense that we've seen so far?
I think the biggest thing is we're just having fun. And, that's what it comes down to. Everybody's excited to get out there and play. And, we don't get upset by a 3-and-out or anything like that. And I think, everyone's just coming together and sort of playing as a complete unit. And Coach Cronick is doing a great job at heading that and getting some great calls in for us, And so I think, a lot of it goes to him and what he's done for this team and this offense. And, I'm just blessed to be surrounded by him and all the other guys around me. And I think we're just having a blast. That's the biggest thing is, we're just excited to get out there and play. And, all those points sort of show that. And 1918 is definitely a little crazy over what is that 106 years?
Yeah, quick math there. When Drew Cronick first got here and you hear hybrid wing T and study up on what he had done at previous stops, what was your first reaction to, learning it and really being able to take on this new challenge of, a brand new offense this year after installing a new offense a year ago as well?
Yeah, so this has been my third offense in 3 years here as a junior. And so I wouldn't say super excited to have to do that for a third time. But once he got in and got to know him and, his vision of how he expected this offense to be, I was super excited, super bought in right away. I think his ability to communicate with the entire team, with me, is great. And, really, honestly, one of a kind for a lot of people I've met, especially people in his position. And so I think just his ability to build what he wanted in our culture as an offense and instill that confidence in us that we hadn't really had in the past few years as an offense. We've been underperforming. And so I think that was the biggest thing is just building that confidence piece back up so that we can just go out there and play free, play loose and make some plays.
And it takes a special quarterback to do that as well. You talk about the communication from the players to the coaching staff, but they also need a type of coach on the field. And usually that happens out of the quarterback position, and the way that you've helped lead this. And I love calling it the sling tee. I don't know if you guys call that in the locker room, if that's what you guys call it too, but the way that you guys have set up the sling tee to success, a lot of that credit lines up with you and how you communicate. Where did you kind of learn that element of your game and take that to the next level going into the year?
Yeah, we like to call it the millennial wing tee as well, is what our offensive line coach calls it, Coach Guillermo. So, but the biggest thing I think is just the people that I've met here and leaders that I've experienced, whether that's military, Coach Ken, Coach Newberry, all those guys, Coach Jasper, just their ability to sort of instill that in me, and just the importance of being a quarterback. I think that carries a lot of weight, and I think it's the most important position in all sports. And so you have to sort of be that coach on the field, and Coach Cronick has to have full trust in me that I know what he's saying and what he's calling and how everything's supposed to look out in the field, so I can make adjustments or fix things if it's not right, because he's up in the box up top. So I think that's a big piece between us, is just the open communication and just being able to see what he sees from up in the box on the field.
Now, Blake, it's a big week, right? You guys are going on the road to UAB, big conference game, but also the life of a mid. You guys have a big exam week also on the yard going on right now. Give us the spark notes of your life schedule of what it's like, so different than any other college football player across the country, of what you go through, and just some of the fun classes and different things you get to experience on a day-to-day.
Yeah, so it is exam week this week for us, our first set of exams during our 6 week of classes. So they're just called 6 week exams, not anything special, but usually it's wake up around 7 o'clock, a little bit before then, go down to breakfast. Classes start at 7:55, and then it's about every hour, 8:55, 9:55, another class will start. So it's definitely interesting, and then we have lunch around noon, come over to football, get some stuff done within the football team, go back to class, then come back here for practice around 4. So it's definitely busy, and especially this week with a lot of the exams, they carry a lot of weight for us as midshipmen in our academics. And so a lot of guys love to focus on those and have to focus on those just to make sure that we can play well on the football field and take care of our business academically. But there's a lot of great classes to get to take as well. I was telling you guys how I just came from cybersecurity. Get to take a lot of leadership courses, ethics courses, which were just really interesting to hear about experiences from leaders who have done it in the field of the military or in other areas, studied it. And so that's the biggest thing, is learning from all these people and trying to just take as much in as possible.
It is really cool getting to hear the life of a midshipman, and you guys do a phenomenal job of balancing both football life and, of course, duty to your country as well. I mean, are there any role models that you've kind of followed in the footsteps after, whether that's somebody that somebody that you've just looked up to, and a mentor at this point in time that's helped you to get where you are and to be the well-rounded young man that you are as well?
Yeah, I mean, the first people would be my parents, and just everything they've instilled in me. Effort-wise, hard work-wise, just being a good person above all things, and focus on academics. I think my parents would be more proud if I was a scholar athlete than anything else. So those are the biggest things. And my high school coaches as well, just for everything they did for me leadership-wise. And then just, like I said, instilling the work ethic to sort of be successful here as a midshipman, and not really my life even adjusting that much due to sort of already living this way within my old football teams and within my own household.
Well, Blake, it's so impressive to hear everything off the field, but equally as impressive as what you and this offense and this entire Navy team in general has been able to do this season. A lot of fun to watch, and wishing you the best of luck along the way.
Thank you guys so much.
Good luck on those exams.
Appreciate it. I'll need it.
Well, thanks to Blake Horvath for joining us during his very busy week. And he was a pretty big internet sensation. I mean, here Kyle's, already starting the Horvath for Heisman hashtag over here.
Oh, I forgot to say it to him. I should have said something about it.
Hopefully we'll have another chance this season.
Yeah, maybe so. I should have said something.
Well, we'll just get it trending, and you don't even have to say anything.
We'll make it happen.
But believe it or not, he wasn't the biggest internet celebrity over this weekend, because Moo Dang might
Yes.
have just broke the internet from what we've seen over the past week. The 2-month-old baby hippo in Thailand.
Let's go.
I think my favorite thing with all of this is learning the name Moo Dang. Do you know what it means?
No. What does it mean?
Any guesses?
More cuteness.
I mean, close.
I don't know. What is it?
Bouncy pig.
What?
So random, right?
That is.
But yeah, Moo Dang even sneaking into our studio this week.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
He took my chair.
I was going to Moo Dang
What's
got
going
the
on?
first look at the studio before we even
I
got
know.
to see
He's
it.
just keeping it warm
so-
for, or she. It's a she,
She,
right?
yes.
She's keeping it warm for me. That's all it is. She's just taking the chair. You can take my chair anytime you want, Moo Dang.
Well, I think our producer Matt Sizik might have had something to do with Moo Dang.
Yeah.
But that was my favorite post that I saw from over the weekend. No question about it. I mean, I may be biased. But there were plenty of others around our schools as well, having some fun with Moo Dang. There's Moo Dang saying, "Wear blue, go Owls."
I don't know if she actually said that, but I mean, the sources say, right?
Right. Yeah.
Wear blue. I'd seen Moo Dang around the conference a little bit though. I mean, that one's in Rice. That's great. Did a nice job, but it wasn't the only spot. Oh, look, it's in Denton.
You got to see Moo Dang. Up
I
close
did,
and personal.
yeah.
That's one of my favorite Moo Dang expressions too. The wide open mouth.
Yeah, excited. It was part of a loud crowd at DATQ Stadium. It was funny. My wife, who of course supports everything that I do, I asked her, I was like, did you get to listen to any of the highlights that we had on the Mean Green Sports Network this past week? She was like, no. And then I asked her, I was like, have you seen Moo Dang on anything? And she was like, yeah, this post right here, and immediately went back to it and was cool with it. And it has the throwback hat on with the script North Texas on it. That's a great Moo Dang.
That's
mood.
great.
It was a mood dang.
It was a mood.
Mhm. This is also a mood.
Yeah, the rain delay. Man,
Mm-hmm.
East Carolina, Moo Dang waited it out too. That was a late night for the Pirates
Yeah.
and Moo Dang.
I
but-
love the fact that whoever edited this, and maybe it's real. Who knows? I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But whoever edited this, like, thought about putting it in the crevice of the locker room while it's the rain delay, because whenever it's a rain delay, everybody just spreads out, just goes wherever they can. And
I mean,
just
that'd be my
figures it out.
position, right?
Yeah,
just on the
down.
ground,
You had to cut the
taking the snooze.
Mhm. That's a great spot.
Yeah.
Find a way to get out of the way. My favorite was actually, it's funny, it wasn't anything to do with the gridiron. It wasn't anything to do with football. I'm going to hand things over to the scouting reports from Tulane Baseball.
If Moo Dang played baseball, what position would she be?
Sounds like a pitcher. Designated hitter, but a power hitter for sure. Shortstop. Second base.
Moo Dang. Who is Moo Dang?
Designated hitter.
Probably first base, thicker body, drops bombs.
Catcher. I don't know who that is. Big boy. It's the big boy. That's McKenna. It's the catcher.
I see Moo Dang as more of like a Jackson Lynn, bomb hitter, raw power type of player.
How cool. I love it. What would you say? What
Well,
position?
first of all, these guys saying who? Like,
yeah,
who?
come on.
Do you
Get
live
with
under
it.
a rock?
Yeah, get with it, guys. Come on
Yeah,
now.
This is quite disappointing. They
That's
must not be
unfortunate.
on social media.
Mhm.
But I mean, whoever is the cutest baseball player, I guess, on the field gets my take. Because right,
What would
she's
you
still-
say is the cutest
Well,
position in baseball?
I mean, just like the smallest. So I don't know. Maybe your pinch hitter.
Okay.
Like, yeah, who
The
comes
pinch
in
hitter.
and saves the day in a clutch moment.
Yeah, not a
something
mean
cute,
player.
Small. I don't know.
I loved how some of them were like, "Oh, it just drops bombs." Yeah,
Right.
Moo Dang drops bombs. What are you talking
I
about?
mean, when you hear the name, I guess you think, but then when you see her, I mean,
Yeah.
just a cute little thing. So,
Yeah, just gets the job
who would
done.
you go with?
I like the catcher. A
Okay.
short, stocky, little power to her. Yeah, I think she's a catcher.
I mean, she'll grow to be what, like a cute 500 pounds. So
Yeah.
maybe at that.
Speaking
yeah.
of slugger, that's
Right.
where it would be, is
Yeah.
whenever she gets to grow up. But lots of fun with Moo Dang as always. But do have an opportunity now to get into some top plays of the week around the American Athletic Conference. Let's start things off on the gridiron. How about this? Fourth quarter, Memphis trying to catch up to the Navy Sling T, but first they're going to have to catch one Blake Horvath. Good luck with that. He goes 90 yards, pulling away from one of the best defenses in all of the American Athletic Conference. His 90-yard touchdown helps the Navy midshipmen to a 3-0 start to the season, and they're now receiving votes in the top 25 poll as well.
Well, count them. TD number 6 for Horvath. I mean, that was just impressive as all get out.
I'll say it again. Said it once already in the show. Horvath for Heisman. You don't just run away from defenses like that at the quarterback position and then sling touchdowns left and right out of the sling tee. That's easy money. Blake Horvath making it inside the top 20 or top 5 this week.
Well, we got more from Annapolis, but the Memphis Tigers this time. Memphis QB Seth Hennigan drops back with time. Hennigan delivers a dime to Rock Taylor with 2 mids draped all over him. Taylor rocks and rolls his way to a TD, and that is what a chemistry of a vet quarterback looks like with a seasoned receiver. You could tell those two have it just absolutely dialed in.
Yeah, 41 straight games with a touchdown now for Seth Hennigan, and that's the way to do it. Drop back in the middle of pressure in a hostile road environment and deliver an absolute strike on the run in the back of the end zone into double coverage. That's why Seth Hennigan still has an opportunity to make this Memphis team a conference contender, and we'll see how he's able to respond this week as they go into non-conference finale against Middle Tennessee. Now, I got more football for you as we go into number 3 this week. What have we learned about the identity of an Army football team, right? It's physicality and teamwork. Well, let me show you some physicality. Boom! Woo. And the teamwork to have the interception. Max Didomenico has the hammer. Anton Thomas with the pick. Navy had the top play earlier with the win. Army says, hold my sword. I'm going to show some physicality. I'm going to show some teamwork, and we're going to have the interception combining for a great defensive play.
What a heads-up play right there. So impressive. That's that Army discipline just shining through.
Right place, right time, always, for the Army Black Knights.
Let's head to number 2, where we've got some women's soccer. North Texas at Tulsa. This is keeper Maddie Ogden for the Mean Green. She boots this one, plenty of power, and this ball will sail all the way. From saves to scores, Ogden with her second career goalie goal. That is just, I can't even fathom. That is so impressive.
What about that? You had not only a goal last year for Maddie Ogden, she became the first goalkeeper in North Texas program history, which North Texas has a rich women's soccer program history with Coach John Hedlund. First one to ever score a goal against UTSA. In the conference opener against Tulsa this year, she does it again. Her scouting report, she's a transfer from Colorado State, second year in the program. Her scouting report reads big leg. As a goalkeeper, she showed it off again there. What about the precise placement and the goal overall? We had plenty to talk about there. Now, we talked about this earlier as well. We've got goalies with big legs. We've got kickers with big legs as well. Number 1 in our top plays this week, we go to Lincoln Financial Field. Let's hear from Al's play-by-play announcer, Kevin Kopp.
The kick is away.
Oh.
It is
Oh.
off the upright and in. Wow.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
They are mobbing Maddox Trujillo at midfield because he just made the longest kick in the history of this stadium, college or professional. 64 yards, an all-time Temple record. Maddox Trujillo.
Listen, it's been a great year in the NFL for kickers so far. It's been a great year of college football for kickers. But Jake Elliott, the Philadelphia Eagles kicker, has never done what Maddox Trujillo just did this past weekend in Lincoln Financial Field history. 64 yards. Not only was it the longest in American Conference history, longest in Temple history, longest in the NCAA since 2009. A phenomenal kick from Trujillo, and it was a game changer, as you mentioned earlier, helping build some momentum for the Temple Owls.
Kickers, I would just say they are the unsung superheroes. Maddox Trujillo, get your cape, man, because you deserve it. Take your bow. That was incredible. Every week we have our top play of the week, and we're like, how is it going to be topped? now I really don't know what to say how this one could truly be top, because this was something. This one is in a top play land of its own.
One of the best plays of the week, best play of the week in our eyes, at least, and it was electrifying on the radio call as well. Shout-outs to the Temple Owls Radio Network as we bring it in to another great week of All-American, Morgan. It was a lot of fun and lots of great footage, highlights, interviews, a lot more. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to the American Athletic Conference channels.
I can't believe we're already on week 5 of the college football season. It is flying, and we are certainly going to learn a lot more about these teams as we get into now the meat of conference play. There's no better time, and teams are really going to start shining through, breaking through, and the race for the American Conference Championship, it is beginning, Kyle.
It is beginning. We got a whole long way to go, and we'll be here with you all the way through it. Special thanks to all those who had an impact on this one. Of course, Matt and Zach in the back doing a phenomenal job with the production in Studio A, as always. For Morgan Uber, I'm Kyle Youmans. We'll see you next week with some more All-American.